Hi, I'm Marcia Perlstein, and I'm here with Mika Paled, and director of Bitter Seeds, and Jeffrey Smith, founder and director of the Institute for Responsible Technology, which educates the public about the dangers of GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. I always lose the O. But I also, before we start, want to thank Mara Lathrop for putting this series together, and Jeanette Force, our incredibly exuberant, energetic executive director of the Port Townsend Film Institute, who constantly expands all our visions and all our activities. Welcome to the two of you. And Mika, Bitter Seeds has won numerous awards all over the world. Could you give us just a quick example of some of the more major ones?
Well, it won the Oxfam Global Justice Award. It won the IDFA Green Screen Award. IDFA is the world's largest documentary film festival. It takes place in Amsterdam. It recently won the Green Film Festival Award in Seoul, South Korea. Those are some major ones.
And the official selection of Telluride.
Yes, it had the world premiere at Telluride. But you know, I want to point out that a film like this has a whole life that is beyond the circuit of film festivals and even television that we haven't gotten to, and the cinemas. And I'm talking about putting it in the hands of activists who are trying to actually affect some change in the world, and using a film like mine to raise consciousness and awareness of a broader audience to the issues.
Hence, we have Jeffrey Smith as an example of that. And Jeffrey, you are the author of Seeds of Deception, and you've just put in the can, which I can almost bet we will see at some future festival, Genetic Roulette, The Gamble of Our Lives. And talk about the activism aspect that you engender through your education in your institute.
Well, I think with the GMO story, it's basically an education activism. When you tell people the truth, as you did in that incredibly fantastic movie, it pulls people's hearts. When you talk about the health dangers of GMOs, it changes their diet on the spot. So for our activism, yes, we are approaching political leaders around the world, and I've spoken to ministers in India numerous times. But in the U.S., for example, by educating people about the health dangers, it changes their diet, it can move the market, and kick GMOs out of the market that way.
And so let's talk a little bit about the crafting of the film, because Filmies are going to be watching this interview. I understand that it's really important to have drawn all the major people from the local area in rural India that you feature in the film, but that must have special challenges. And could you talk a little bit about those challenges?
Well, you know, my films are front and center are the characters and a strong narrative arc. What I mean by a narrative arc in a documentary is that we're going to be following these people through a period where they're trying to accomplish something, and we will see if they succeed or they fail. And if they're compelling characters, we will be rooting for them and wanting to find out what happens. And that this narrative arc illuminates an issue that I'm interested in getting people to think about it a little bit more. So in this case, when I decided to make a film about the farmers' crisis in India, my challenge was to find the people that will embody this issue. There are 23,000 villages in this part of India called Vidarbha, where I went to film. Which village, which people, that was all stuff that I had to figure out when I arrived there. And I started by traveling to the villages and talking to the farmers, and I quickly realized that most of them are depressed. They really carry the burden of the world on their shoulders, and people like that you cannot build an entire film around. Most people don't want to be watching that kind of a character for an hour and a half. But I also found out that they had a secondary burden, which is many of the ones who committed suicide have daughters at marrying age that they can't afford a dowry for. And so I started traveling to the high schools and meeting with girls of the senior class who were just 2-3 months from being eligible to get married. And just chatting with them. And one of my stock questions was, what are your dreams for your future? And in one of these schools, a girl says, I want to be a journalist. So I immediately perked my ears and asked her why. And she said, I want to tell the whole world about the crisis of the farmers. Then I found out that her own father had committed suicide. And so, of course, I went to her village, to her family, and we started doing some test filming with her. And she ended up being one of the 2 main protagonists of the film. And then I looked for a farmer among her neighbors in the same village.
And also, of course, she gave you great entree to the farmers being able to really tell their stories because she was an insider. And it feels to me, from having seen the film numerous times, that her participation with you in this project is one of those times that you date your life by. She will always see her life before and after she met Mika Peled. I mean, I really think it was that profound an experience. Jeffrey, when did you first become aware of Bitter Seeds, and what happened to you upon your initial connection to it?
Well, I got emails from all over the world, you know, check out this movie. And so we finally got a copy, and it was interesting watching it because I've traveled to India, I've spoken in India, I have a book out in India. But this was it was a beautiful job, Mika, of bringing me right into what I was writing about. And it was an interesting time when you don't know whether the harvest is going to work for the BT cotton. And there I am, not wanting BT cotton to work generically, but wanting this family to survive. You know, it's like, don't put me in that position, Mika. It's like, who am I to root for? Of course, I was rooting for the survival of this family, but I want them to realize that not to plant GMOs again. So I had a very nuanced and way that I was an audience member.
No, it's totally a paradox. It's the same paradox as I was describing earlier to you, that I'm totally enthusiastic about this film, and it's about a dastardly, horrible issue. But the enthusiasm is that the word is getting out, and people are going to be educated, and it will stimulate activism. I mean, there's many activists already, but it's just going to just exponentially increase people's connection. And I liken it to Anne Frank in the way you say you need to tell the individual story to tell the larger story. When you say 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust, were incinerated, but you learn about one young girl and what happened in her life, it's very similar to the kind of thing that you do. And in addition, there's the artistry, the cinematography, just the beauty inside that sordid story. So tell us a little bit about that paradox.
The paradox
Of the beauty of the cinematography and the horrors that it's
Well, first
showing.
I want to tell you that I learned firsthand about the importance of the individual story in my previous film, China Blue, which is about sweatshop conditions in factories in China. And I can tell you all day long that there are millions of faceless Chinese workers who are being exploited, and you say, yeah, it's terrible, and you move on. But highlighting the story of this one girl, Jasmine, and making her appear to be like the girl next door, our neighbor, made the whole thing unacceptable. And people went home, and I've heard of people who, after my film, went home and took off the closet all the clothes that had Made in China label on them and burned them, which was not the message of the film, but that's how deeply moved people are by the story of one person. We as human beings, we are moved by stories. That's, when we think about how we came into the world, the most ancient stories there are, it's all about storytelling.
And stories really symbolize connection, human connection, the viewer and the person that's telling the story. Now, you're based in San Francisco, you're based in Iowa. But you're doing so much international work, both of you. This is a good time to talk about the whole globalization trilogy you've done, and your connection to sort of the global situation?
So I think the globalization is the overarching theme of our times. And it encompasses a lot of things. Some of them are positive, but a lot of them are negative. And I wanted with this series to put a human face on some of these complex issues. And the way that the trilogy is organized, the first film is about us, the consumers in America. The film is called Store Wars, when Walmart comes to town, and it's about a small town that's fighting to keep Walmart out. That got me interested in how the cheap goods that Walmart sells us, how they get made. And that took me to a blue jeans factory in China. That film is called China Blue, story of one girl that comes to this factory to get a job and descends into sweatshop hell. And that got me interested in the raw materials. And those are the cotton growers in India whose cotton is exported to China's garment factories where they make the jeans that we all buy from Walmart. So that is the connection between the three. And in each part of the tale, we see how ordinary people's lives are impacted very negatively as a result of the incredible power that multinational corporations have. And those corporations that are motivated mostly by greed rather than by improving the quality of life of everybody.
This would be a good time for both of you to tell your websites to the viewer, because there's so much information to be gleaned and so much connection to the things you're both talking about. Could you say your website first?
My website is teddybearfilms.com. People can see the trailers of all three films there. And of course, we have a Bitter Seeds Film Facebook page.
www.teddybearfilms.com. And yours?
Well, the new movie that we released this past month is Genetic Roulette: The Gamble of Our Lives, and the website is geneticroulettemovie.com. And we also have a non-GMO shopping guide to help people avoid GMOs at nongmoshoppingguide.com. And our institute's main website is responsibletechnology.org.
And this would be a good time. We have all of these websites. We could spend our lives looking at what these guys are doing and have done. What's your dream? You've just put this other film in the can. Where are you going next?
Well, we've had 1 million views this week, and it was a free showing week. And it was released specifically because in California there's Prop 37, which is to label genetically modified foods. So I've been traveling up and down California and will continue till the election. And so our immediate plan is to win that Prop 37 vote so that GMOs become labeled. We've heard that companies will probably remove GMOs if they are requiring labels, and that could create a non-GMO food supply in the United States in one single stroke.
Wow. That's quite a dream, and it's actually reachable. It's really reachable, especially starting in California is the place to start, as crazy as that state is.
When we're talking about this being such a dream, in fact, the civilized world already have these kind of laws on the books everywhere. We are behind not only Western Europe, but China, Australia. They already have this on the books.
Oh, I know. Don't get me started on what we don't do well. What's next for you?
Well, Jeffrey mentioned Prop 37 in California. I've been very supportive of that, and I've donated 45 public screenings of my film for free to the campaign. And we are doing a number of things with them. The film will play for a week in a cinema in San Francisco, beginning of October, and it'll be sponsored by a number of organizations, including the Label GMOs campaign. We also, just this last week, I got a word that we convinced the PBS stations in both San Francisco and Los Angeles to air the film before the elections.
Oh, what timing.
And we are waiting for answers from Sacramento and San Diego and a few other California stations. So as far as the immediate future, this is it. And I should say, I've worked on this trilogy for 12 years, and so I'm enjoying the sense of completion and the sense of freedom to pick whatever next topic I choose.
And I have some inside information, which is that you're getting on a plane after this festival and traveling 29 hours to your next stop, because this film, it just has legs.
Yeah,
you're walking those legs and
wings.
flying those legs.
Yeah,
So,
the next stop is in Central Asia. It's in the country of Kyrgyzstan. And I've already been with this film really all over the world, from Brazil to Istanbul, from South Africa to Jerusalem to Hong Kong.
Amsterdam,
to
one of my
Amsterdam.
spots.
So, and everywhere people are connecting to this film in a similar way, in a sense that they are immediately wanting to tell me what's going on in their own country.
Yeah.
And there's always a connection. And the question of how we're going to grow food in the future is really crucial to the whole question of the future of the planet. Because the way we treat the earth is really the way we treat the planet.
You know, in our wonderful community here, Jefferson County, there's a huge local farmers movement, and our local Paradise Theater is going to tell the stories of the farmers that go way, way back and where they're headed now and where they've been. We have just a few minutes left, so I'd like to give you each an opportunity to make a final comment. We'll start with you, Jeffrey.
You know, focusing on the India situation, the lack of reliability of the BT cotton has ended up resulting in about 200,000 farmer suicides. It's tragic. But also, they allow animals to graze on the cotton plants after harvest, and thousands have died. And the farm workers, when they pick this genetically engineered cotton, they get rashes all over their bodies and itching. And this is an example of what's happening in India. But in the United States, we're seeing a huge increase in diseases and disorders corresponding when GMOs were introduced, and the thousands of doctors who are prescribing non-GMO diets in this country are now reporting that people are getting better quickly from non-GMO diets. So I think the days of GMOs may be numbered as this type of information is coming out. Like this week, they found huge tumors in rats and organ damage and early deaths in rats that were fed genetically modified corn for 2 years. And it's basically complete evidence, all we need to remove GMOs. Of course, they're going to fight it, but this is the type of evidence we have now.
And before we give Mika the last word, I do want to say the other thing that you do so beautifully, besides telling the individual story, is you give statistics that are absolutely mind-boggling. One farmer commits suicide every 30 minutes in the area that you filmed. And a quarter of a million, there were a quarter of a million suicides.
When I first heard that every 30 minutes a farmer commits suicide, I thought Vandana Shiva must be exaggerating. She was the one who told me about it. And I went and checked that and cross-checked it, and I've been challenged on that a number of times. The one thing I would want to say is that what's been remiss from this conversation is mentioning Monsanto. Monsanto is, oddly enough, is the world's largest genetically modified seed company with an incredible stranglehold on the market. In India, you cannot go to a seed shop in the cotton area and find a packet of seed that does not include Monsanto's GM technology in it. And in this country, there are talks about the government reducing the amount of regulations over Monsanto. We've talked before about Proposition 37 in California. Monsanto has donated over $4 million to defeat this proposition. Other industry giants have done their share, and people who are concerned about that, they should really educate themselves about Monsanto. They should contact Monsanto and let the company know how they feel about it. They should contact their representatives in Congress and let them know how they feel about it.
And along with that, money should not be buying elections. And we thank you both so much, Mika Peled and Jeffrey Smith, for being with us today.
It's a pleasure.